Yashodanandana Prajanarandana Yashodanandana Prajanarandana Yamunatira Vanachari Yamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabihari Jai Mr. Bhagavad Paramahamsa, Parudikacharya Ashtotar, the Shishi Mada Divine Grace, Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada ki Jai. ISKCON BPT founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa, Parudikacharya Ashtotar, the Shishi Mada Divine Grace, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur ki Jai. Ananda Koti Vaishnavinda ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur ki Jai. Bhagavad Gita ki. Now, you didn't do anything with the levels on this, right? Okay, this is just as it was. Yes. Okay. Let's see. I think we're on 18. Yeah, we definitely did 17. Okay, we'll do 18. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. On this 14th day of July 2020 in SanDiego, we're reading from Srimad Bhagavad Gita as it is, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. And we are in chapter 16 entitled The Divine and Demoniac Natures, text number 18. Page 632. Ahankaram balang dapam kamam krodham cha sankshita mam atma padadeheshu padvishanto visuyakaha. Ahankaram balang dapam kamam krodham cha sankshita Mamatma paradeheshu pradvishanto visuyakaha. Ahankaram balang dapam kamam krodham cha sankshitaha Mamatma paradeheshu pradvishanto visuyakaha. Ahankaram balam dapam kamam krodham cha sankshitaha mamatma padadeheshu pradvishanto visuyakaha. Ahankaram balam dapam kamam krodham cha sankshitaha mam atma padadeheshu Padvishanto Visuyakaha. Want to try it? Ahankaram balang darpam kamam krodham cha sankshitaha paradeheshu Padvishanto bisuyakaha. Ahankaram, false ego. Balam, strength. Darpam, pride. Kamam, lust. Krodham, anger. Cha, also. Sankshita, having taken shelter of. Mam, me. Atma, in their own. Pada, and in other. Deheshu, bodies. Padvishantaha, blaspheming. Abhisuyakaha, envious. Translation. So, of course, he's speaking about the demons. Bewildered by false ego, strength, pride, lust, and anger, the demons become envious of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is situated in their own bodies and in the bodies of others, and blaspheme against the real religion. Purport. A demoniac person, being always against God's supremacy, does not like to believe in the scriptures. He is envious of both the scriptures and the existence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This is caused by his so-called prestige and his accumulation of wealth and strength. He does not know that the present life is a preparation for the next life. Not knowing this, he is actually envious of his own self, as well as of others. He commits violence on other bodies and on his own. He does not care for the supreme control of the personality of Godhead, because he has no knowledge. Being envious of the scriptures and the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he puts forward false arguments against the existence of God and denies the scriptural authority. He thinks himself independent and powerful in every action. He thinks that since no one can equal him in strength, power, or wealth, he can act in any way and no one can stop him. If he has an enemy who might check the advancement of his sensual activities, he makes plans to cut him down by his own power. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnanandana Shalakaya Chakshu Unmidatam Mena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkness of ignorance, but my spiritual master Srila Prabhupada opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisance unto him and all members of Sri Parampara. So one note on this word Darpa, Prabhupada translated as pride, which is certainly fine. But there's different kinds of pride. We know Trinadapisuna Chena, Torariva Sahishana, Torapisishana, Amanina Manarena. So Amanina means free of pride, in one sense, not wanting any honor. So that's another word for pride. Darpa, to me, means vanity. You know why? Cheto, Darpanamarjanam. Darpan is a word for mirror. They even call it a vanity. She's sitting down at her vanity, isn't it so, Ed? Isn't that a word for vanity? And you're putting on your cosmetics and things like that. So that's another quality of the demons. Ahankaram. So ahankar is the root of the whole problem. Ahankara is the false ego, the false sense of self, bodily identification, and that includes the subtle body and the mind, etc. So when that ahankar, that false pride in the body, and it's often Prabhupada would talk about quoting this verse that Krishna actually speaks on the Battle of Kurukshetra when he meets with all the residents of Vrindavan. You read you know that pastime. I have another one where there's a full solar eclipse, and it's very auspicious to bathe in these lakes that Parashuram created when he killed thousands of Kshatriyas. And they used to be filled with blood long ago, but they're water now. So they all met there. And it's interesting because Krishna's in the role of, he's got all his queens with him and everything, and he's got children, and so he's in a householder, role. And so Krishna's there, so all kinds of demigods and sages, and they all come in from outer space and different bows wherever they are to see Krishna. So meanwhile, I think it's Vasudeva, he's performing these sacrifices, at the time. And he sees all these wonderful sages coming, there's Atri and there's Narada's coming down, So he says, he wants to take advantage, and he asks them for instruction on spiritual matters, what's the goal of life, how to achieve it, like that. And at first they're stunned. Here's Krishna. He's his father of Krishna, and he's asking what the goal of life is. So Krishna gets into the mood, and he speaks in the mood of a attached householder. And this verse is that. Yasyatma buddhi kunapetri dhatake swadi kalatradashaboma ijyadi yat tirtha buddhi salane nakarhichit janesha bigyesha seva gokara. So he's saying there, and of course it's always quoted in a verse in itself. It's not, that whole idea that he's speaking about himself, of feigning to be an attached household. But it's interesting. So Atma Buddhi means the idea that one is this bag full of mucus, bile, and air. Yes, Atma Buddhi kunape chidatuke. Kunape can mean a corpse, or it can mean like just the outer body that we have. So what is it filled with? Mucus, bile, and air. This is the Ayurvedic thing. If they have to be in balance, So there's a lot of mucus, a lot of bile, a lot of air in there. So, and that's me. I'm just a bag of mucus, bile, and air. This is really foolish. So then there's some other qualification. Kunape swadi my own. Swadi kalatradishu bome ijadi. So swadi means thinking their mind, what, for the kalatra, that's the wife, from which everything expands. Adishu, then from the wife come the children and the wealth and the home and the family, the whole mishpucha, as we used to say in New York when I used to speak Yiddish. Mishpucha. It means the extended family and the whole entanglement. Swadi kalatra adishu. And then boma ijadi. Boma ijadi has two meanings. One is that the worship of these demigod figures made of earth is boma means earth, is somehow that they're actually worshipable, that you should worshiping the demigods for material benefit. But Prabhupada always translates as to see the place of your birth as the boma, the way as worshipable. This is the nationalism. This is another. It's all growing out of this bodily identity. Obviously, I'm born in this land, have a certain color, certain language, certain tribe, whatever it may be, and that this is us, and be proud of that. That's insanity. And then the third one is yatirtha buddhi sadhana nakarhachij, or the final disqualification. To think that going to pilgrimage, simply you go a long distance and there's always some water, either a lake or mostly rivers, and you bathe there. And then you come home and you went on pilgrimage. Rather than going there, you should bathe and fast a day and then seek out the sages who live there and listen and hear something, learn something. So Krishna speaks this. And what's the final verdict? Titta Buddha said in the Kari, Janeshu Abhigeshu. Janeshu Abhigeshu. Not inquiring into the absolute truth from the Savior. Sa eva gokara. Such a person who has this mentality, I don't know if it's even any one of them or all of them, is like a cow or an ass. Now there's another meaning to Gokura, which means the ass that carries the feed for the cows, which I like to think rather than, because we're pro-cow rather than demeaning the cow. But anyway, not very nice mentality. So now when this becomes extreme, these different misconceptions, you get into the demonic territory. Demonic territory just means that you're not just affected by the modes of passion and ignorance, but you're embracing them. In other words, you're not just an agnostic. Well, maybe there's a God, maybe there's not a God. They can learn about Krishna. I don't know. Well, here, find out in the book. No, you're atheistic. You're absolutely positive there's no God. You write books about it. You have conferences. They even have atheistic churches now. Did you ever hear that, Ed? Yes, because they said, "Oh, here's all this nice. People come together and they sing together. We're missing out as atheists. So we'll have our. So I don't know what they sing in there, but so here what happens is balam darpam. So the power they're proud. Because of the false ego, in their physical strength, in their looks, the darpa, and then kama kora sangshita, having taken shelter of lust and anger. In other words, you meet with others, you read about things that make you angry, and you go and have some wild party, something like that. In other words, you're not just victimized by it, you're embracing it, and you're trying to increase it as much as possible. That's the demons. And when it comes to God, they just makes them angry. Mam atma padadeheshu, I who am in their own bodies, and everyone's body, they blaspheme because they're envious. Now, one note about this word envy and envious, you have to watch out when you read Prabhupada's books. Prabhupada says here they're envious of their own selves, right? Yeah, they're actually envious of his own self. Well, normally we think, well, how can I be envious of my own self? Because whatever I have is mine, and envious usually means jealous, right, basically. No. Envious can mean the bear malice toward. In other words, they're self-destructive, even sometimes knowingly. You know, I mean, when you get into these heavy drug scenes, there's got to be an understanding deep in there somewhere that you're destroying your mind, brain, right? I mean, you know, it's obviously happening. You know people who have OD'd, you know, and everything like that. There's a certain death wish there, which is definitely demonic, you know. So that's what this envious of their own self. Let's see, he does not know the present life is preparation for the next life. This is the main thing they want to deny, is that there's no life after death, you know, because then there's a reckoning. There's always the problem, well, you know, I got to face the music, you know. No. It's just this one life, and grab as much as you can, you know, and then it's over. And that's really the essence of the whole thing. And they don't want to believe that. I remember there was this incident a long time ago. It's maybe 20 years, 25 years. There was this coach of one of the main soccer teams in the UK. And I don't know if you've been reading this philosophy, you know, this, one of Prabhupada's books. But he made the statement. Maybe it wasn't, you know, it isn't like he broadcast it as some big revelation or something, but he made some kind of statement that the people who are disabled, you know, they're suffering some kind of karma from a previous life. He lost his job. It came out, you know. People do not want to believe that, you know, because if it's coming from a previous life, that means what we do in this life. That means, well, now I have to worry about that, you know. And that's why it says they blasphemed against the scriptures, because scriptures like Bhagavad Gita, even the Bible, you know, there's you have to pay for your sins, right? So they don't want to understand that. They don't want to believe that, and so they violently disbelieve it and write books about it. So this is leading to Krishna's verdict here on the 20th verse, that they never approached me and gradually sink down to the most top bottom. So this is the road to hell, both in this life and the next. I mean, you don't even have to believe in God to see that rampant, uncontrolled sense gratification, personified in this present capitalist system, which is based on the crazy premise that we can just keep expanding and expanding and expanding and exploiting nature without a reaction. I mean, it's insane. There really is a madness to it, and basically it points that the point is that, well, at least we're going to enjoy. You know, it sinks down to our children, grandchildren. Well, you know, it's up to them. You know, too bad. In other words, becomes extremely self-centered and repulsive mentality. So that's Krishna's describing that. You know, balam the kamam krodam. Taking shelter. When you take shelter of lust and anger, all the good qualities are gone after that. Okay. Any questions on this verse? Very sobering. Text 19. Tanaham dushata kruran samsareshu naradhaman chapam mijasam ashubhan asuri shveva yonishu. Those who are envious and mischievous, think envious as malicious, and mischievous, who are the lowest among men, I perpetually cast into the ocean of material existence, into various demonic species of life, so they lose the human form. Purport. In this verse it is clearly indicated that the placing of a particular individual soul in a particular body is the prerogative of the supreme will. The demoniac person may not agree to accept the supremacy of the Lord, and it is a fact that he may act according to his own whims, but his next birth will depend upon a decision of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and not on himself. In the Srimad Bhagavatam 3rd canto, it is stated that an individual's soul after his death is put into the womb of a mother where he gets a particular type of body under the supervision of superior power. Therefore, in the material existence we find so many species of life, animals, insects, men, and so on. All are arranged by the superior power. They are not accidental, and as for the demoniac, it is clearly said here that they are perpetually put into the wombs of demons, and thus they continue to be envious, the lowest of mankind. That such demoniac species of men are held to be always full of lust, always violent and hateful, and always unclean. The many kinds of hunters in the jungle are considered to belong to demonic species of life. So, this verse Prabhupada is referring to here, Karmana Daivanetina Jantur Dehopapatiye Striyapa Vishtu Udaram Pungsorita Kanashya. Karmana, according to one's karma activities, Daivanetrena means the supervision of the divine, including the demigods, but mostly the super soul like that. Jantur Dehopapatiye, a jantur, this is a conditioned soul, gets another body. How? By taking shelter of a particle of semen and being injected into a woman's body. That's what that verse is about. So that's if you're getting a human body. If you're going lower, you don't know where you're going. And also in that third chapter, third canto, it's described, there's a little bit of the description of hell. It's more detailed in the fifth canto. But the third canto, it describes this hellish punishment you may receive, and it's fascinating because in one sense it seems that you go directly to the next body, but there's that interval, which can seem like a very, very long time because you're in this subtle body. When the sense of time expands, or it changes completely. So you feel like you're being punished for thousands of years. You're being thrown off a mountain. And smashed against the rock, but you don't really die. You get pulled up again on top of the mountain, smashed, smashed. Until, and the Prabhupada explains what happens is that eventually you get your human intelligence is covered more and more until you're suitably rudimentary intelligence, so that you can then take some animal body or some insect body or something. Now in that body, then there's no karma. You're just burning it off, and that's where evolution takes place. It's consciousness. Okay, we're finished with that insect body. Now we move up to a bird body, like that, until you come back to the human form. So the natural conclusion to all this is that we should really take advantage of our human body. It's a rare achievement, and it's even rarer to come in touch and to be receptive to this message that can really where we can break out of this chain. Who knows how many times we've been down and these species up, finally down, because we didn't come in touch. Really, it requires the intervention of Krishna or his representative to break through all the ignorance, because it's all a matter of ignorance. You don't know what you're doing. You're just reacting to the sensations and your culture, how you were raised. That's also mentioned. Prabhupada talks about this in other places. How, I'm telling you, when I read that third canto, it gave me a lot of faith that this Bhagavatam really is, has knowledge that you would never expect. Describing the development of the little fetus in the womb. How did they get that 5,000 years ago? So he's describing that there's the phenomenon where sometimes it says a pious soul, but it's not pious enough to be born in the devotee body. But you wake up after 6 lunar months. No. Yeah, 6 lunar months is 7 solar months. Is that right? No, it's the other way around. 7 lunar months, 6 solar months. Solar months are a little longer. So, in other words, you have consciousness. You can't really do much. You're in this womb, but you're aware in your brain. You remember some of your past life, how you got there, and so you're praying the prayers of the fetus in the womb. It's like a chapter or something. It's amazing. And basically, he says we're praying for forgiveness and promise I'll never do that again. And I'll I'm going to be a real devotee this time. But then you're born. And the trauma of birth is too much. You get total forgetfulness, and you're helpless. You're being trained as a little attached soul. So that's why, if you're fortunate, good fortune is being born in a devotee family. Prabhupada explains how he had that good fortune, and Purikit, of course, and so many others, and the children who were born into this movement. From day one, I remember distinctly one devotee, Murlidhar, who painted so many things. He was in Brooklyn, and there he's carrying his little newborn kid. He can't be more than a week old, and he's in front of the Radha Govinda in Brooklyn, and see the deer. You can imagine having that as an early impression, So that's the difference. But the demons, they are so disqualified they get thrown down into demonic species of life, and a long postponement before they get another chance. Yeah.
That moment, that period, 7 lunar months, 6 solar months, whatever, around that time, when there's that period where the child in the womb is aware of past life, good, bad, and then therefore can pray to Krishna. But I don't. What exactly is the value in that? If then anything that goes on in that period is overwhelmed or just kind of lost due to the intense experience of childbirth, of birth. Like, what exactly is why is that significant, or why is that even? What's the use of it if it's then? Lost immediately.
That's a good question, and I'd like to read the passage again, maybe briefly, because I haven't read it in a while. But I think what's the value of that is for those who are still above ground, who haven't, human beings. Oh my God, I'm going to be in that situation, and even though I may get some understanding, and I'll be so regretful of what I did or didn't do in my life, it's not going to help me because I've already the die is cast. Because of all my karma, I'm not being born in a devotee family, and I'm going to be raised. So that's a warning to us, that we shouldn't be in that situation. In other words, we may not go back to God in this life, but if we're trying to be devotees, we have a good chance of being, we're promised we'll pick up somewhere in our next life where we started off. Maybe even be born in a devotee family. So that's an encouragement to get serious in this life, rather than be faced in that situation of waking up and then praying, oh God, I should have gone to Mangalartik more often, please. I should have chanted my rest. You know what I'm saying? It's for us, This is really the theme of so much of this instruction here. You can see there's so much pride, the hankar, the demons can't be reasoned with. Krishna comes and he kills them, because they're committed to demonic mentality. So, but it's obviously foolish, because it reminds me of, I always talk about it, like Dhenukasura is one of my favorite pastimes. So in that particular chapter, Balaram is featured. Krishna, they go out in the forest and Krishna starts glorifying Balaram, and then when the boys are hungry, then Balaram is the one who goes and kills the first, kills Dhenukasura. And so then what happens? So Dhenukasura is there with his friends and associates. In other words, other donkey demons. So these are intelligent living entities who practice a lot of austerities to be able to do this shape-shifting. They're not just donkeys. They're great yogis who took this form and thought, well, this will be useful. But still, they're so much overcome by anger and fury at Krishna, in this case Balaram, that they all come running, and they're all killed. Rather than, the rest of us, the human beings, they got a little bit smart, so after a few were killed, the rest of them ran off, But the point is, the whole mentality of being very confident in one's power and domination and all these things, it's just Maya's trick, because we're all very fragile beings. I mean, Krishna doesn't really need to personally come, as Prabhupada says, material energy can do it. So what is the basis of all that pride? It's complete illusion. And then comes the realization at the point of death, or whatever, you get some terrible disease like COVID-19, I'm helpless here. All my bluster and it's not going to help me here. It's too late. It's too late. The die is cast. You've made your commitment. So the whole lesson for us is that learn from hearing, rather than having to go through, and postpone the reckoning for a million years in some other species of life. This is all real, and you can see how absurd and useless is all people's concern with other things. This is the most important topic, and we don't have people. Of course, now is COVID-19. That's another thing. We used to have 8 people in class. Now we have 4. And a few online. So that's this is the mission of the Krishna consciousness movement, to try to make people convinced of what's really important in life and set different priorities, and realize what Krishna said in the 5th chapter, and the theme goes on, that all this absorption with sense gratification and the physical body and all of these is the source of your misery. That's why you'll always be in misery until you learn the techniques based on the philosophy of how to contact the Supreme Lord and open up that channel to the higher pleasure that is wholesome. Like any material pleasure is unwholesome, even if it doesn't, some are more unwholesome than others, but but all of it is just trying to convince you or bewilder you to think that there's some enjoyment here when all you're doing is paving a way for another birth and suffering, So Krishna consciousness really makes the most sense, but when people are nuts, they can't understand it. That's the problem. So you have to try to give them the intelligence back. Yeah, go ahead.
This also isn't such an important point, but I'm wondering, after some time I've realized it's still not clear to me. So if someone in human body leaves the body, then if one lived a very degraded life or one's desires are very low, then one may take birth as like some kind of microbe even, and then from there work way up to grass and different lower species, and then
years and years and years,
and then go up, and then so many lifetimes. But then at the same time, there's statements that when one takes up the human form of life, one is in rain, which then comes down and then goes into the soil, and then it's taken up into grass, and then it's eaten by. And then
you're talking about going to the heavenly planets. They come down in rain.
So that's how it is. Okay, so it's the heavenly planets where then it comes down in the form of rain, and then it's taken up by grass, which then turned into grains or eaten by milk or whatever, and then becomes semen, and then semen. So that's only heavenly planets?
Yeah, that's the heavenly planets.
Oh, okay, so that's the distinction. Okay. And then, this is also not so important, but then does that mean that every single, how exactly does that work? Does that mean all semen has so many jivas in it? Is there any understanding about that?
And only one of them.
Yeah, because only one.
Jackpot. Yeah.
And then also, because there's the idea, there's urdhva if a male retains semen, then it rises to the brain. Does that mean kill the jiva in the body, or is it the jiva not?
These are some things that I fortunately never need to think about.
Yeah, I just thought so important. I'm just wondering.
We can try to track that down.
Anyway,
I definitely know. Yeah, it's a mystery how it actually works technically. Right, should we do 1 or 2 more? Okay, now Chris is really getting to the end here. Text 20. Asurim yonamapana mudha janmani mama prapyaiva konteya tato yan chadamam gatim. Adamam, the lowest destination. Attaining repeated birth amongst the species of the maniac life, O son of Kunti, such persons can never approach me. Gradually they sink down to the most abominable type of existence. Of course, this never means virtually never, millions and millions of years, because nobody is eternally condemned. Purport. It is known that God is all-merciful, but here we find that God is never merciful to the demoniac. It is clearly stated that the demoniac people, life after life, are put into the wombs of similar demons, and not achieving the mercy of the Supreme Lord, they go down and down, so that at last they achieve bodies like those of cats, dogs, and hogs. It is clearly stated that such demons have practically no chance of receiving the mercy of God at any stage of later life. In the Vedas also it is stated that such persons gradually sink to become dogs and hogs. It may be then argued in this connection that God should not be advertised as all-merciful if he is not merciful to such demons. In answer to this question, in the Vedanta Sutra we find that the Supreme Lord has no hatred for anyone. The placing of the asuras, the demons, in the lowest status of life is simply another feature of his mercy. Sometimes the asuras are killed by the Supreme Lord. But this killing is also good for them, for in Vedic literature we find that anyone who is killed by the Supreme Lord becomes liberated. There are instances in history of many asuras, Ravana, Kamsa, Hiranyakashipu, to whom the Lord appeared in various incarnations just to kill them. Therefore God's mercy is shown to the asuras if they are fortunate enough to be killed by him. And I think that, again, time stretches and stretches out, and eventually these souls, they come into a human form of life, and there's a Hare Krishna movement around, the Sankirtana movement is happening, and they somehow or other get some prasadam, hear the holy name. There's a text in the 6th canto. Mostly we hear that if you just chant one name. I was just reading the pastime Lord Chaitanya in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, where devotees ask, well, how am I going to recognize a Vaishnava? Because he says to serve the Vaishnavas. And he says very distinctly, Eka Nama. He said if someone chants the holy name once, then they should be considered saintly, and you can offer your obeisance. Now, in the Nectar of Instruction, it says in the mind, Krishneti yasagaditang manasadriyeta. This Krishna iti literally means name Krishna. They are the Krishna, name once. So, that's Krishna's mercy, where someone who's just come out of the steakhouse who sees the Harinam downtown SanDiego, and he says, "Oh, hey, Diri, look, there's the Hare Krishnas." They chanted, they heard the name. Millions of years of sinful activity were destroyed. So that's how Krishna shows his mercy in one way. He comes, as in his most merciful form as Lord Chaitanya, giving the holy name to everybody. So that's how we're sitting here. Of course, you're in a different category. You didn't perform all kinds of sinful activities when you were 16, 15, 18. Yeah. But this is the opportunity, and we have a responsibility as recipients of this mercy to give it to as many people as possible. That's the way the Sankirtan movement grows. All right, now from here to the end is summing up. These are the 4 main verses for me. Tribadang nadakasyedam dwaram nashanam atmanaha kama kroras tata lobhas tasmareta tvayang chajit. There are 3 gates leading to this hell. So this hell means, he says, Adamam Gatim, the condemned destination. 3 gates leading to this hell: lust, anger, and greed. Every sane man should give these up, for they lead to the degradation of the soul. Purport. The beginning of the demoniac life is described herein. One tries to satisfy his lust, and when he cannot, anger and greed arise. A sane man who does not want to glide down to the species of demoniac life must try to give up these 3 enemies, which can kill the self to such an extent that there will be no possibility of liberation from this material entanglement for a long time. So virtually never. So, how can we dovetail lobha, for instance, which is greed? Well, there's a verse. There's always a verse from the Pajavali. Vichayani vichayani vichintani punak punak kripanasya dhananiva tvannamani bhavantaya. This is a prayer to become a miser. A miser is the epitome of greed, right? Compelled to constantly collect and count his precious hoard, the miser contemplates his wealth with avaricious aims. Please bless me to become a miser who's compelled, O Lord, to constantly collect and count and contemplate your names. No, this is Pajavali doesn't mean Rupa Goswami, although there's some verses in there by him, but it's his nectar file. Yeah, his own favorites, you can imagine. Yeah, and there's some very famous verses in there. So, greed, there's this famous saying from an old movie from before your time. You remember, greed is good. Greed is good. It's the stock market. You're swinging between greed and fear. Greed. Okay, let me invest. Oh my God, what's happened to my stock? And you sell it with fear. They're immersed in that. So that's not good. That's the doors to degradation. But that greed can be dovetailed, just like kama. In the verse, Dharma Varuddha Bhuteshu Kama Srimada Tarshava, 7th chapter, Krishna says, I am lust, sex activity. That's not against the rules, Dharma Avaruddha. In other words, there's a way of doing it for propagating Krishna conscious children. And Prabhupada, I heard him say in a lecture one time, we're not against sex. After all these acharyas, Ramanujacharya, Madhvacharya, Bhaktisana, they all came, they're children, they all had mothers and fathers, So of course it has to be sex. But when it becomes, it takes over your mind, and that becomes your, then you become victimized by it. Kama dinang katina katita palita duni deshas. Prabhupada would quote this verse all the time. This is a verse by Madhavendra Puri, quoted by Lord Chaitanya in the instruction to Sanatan in the 20th chapter, I think. Kama dinang katina katita palita duni deshas tesham jata mai nakuruna natrapa no upashanti utsrijayata nadiyadupate sampatam labda buddhistvamayat akshadanamabayam mamnayung svatmadasi. In how many ways have I sought to obey the seductive demands of my wicked desires? You know this one? They've shown me no mercy. Yet on I've gone shamelessly trying to quench lust's unquenchable fires. But now I'm rejecting these hellish desires, for my higher intelligence now has awoken. O Krishna, O shelter of fearlessness, please let me serve you with faith that will never be broken. So this is a great prayer. How he's come to the understanding by purifying intelligence by hearing Shastra, by reading and hearing things. So now he knows this is not good. All of this running after sense gratification here and there. So these are the demands. In other words, lust and greed and anger and all these things, they kind of take hold of your consciousness and they force you to act here and in there and go here and there. This is what in the 3rd chapter, that famous painting of the chariot, out of control going down the mountain road, So we're in the chariot, we're the soul riding. And our intelligence is supposed to be guiding the chariot with the mind, which is the reins. But the senses, the 5 horses, each one with a different sense, is out of control and can't be controlled. So we're now victimized. The chariot is the body, and the soul is riding along, and we're being pulled here and there by all the senses. Because our intelligence is too weak. So when the intelligence becomes strong by hearing, then the higher self can control the lower self. And you can decide what the mind is going to do with the senses. The senses are going to go there, don't go there. Hear that, don't hear that. So so he's saying, Utsrijaitam. Now I'm rejecting these demands of these senses, which are like slave drivers, all these years and births, But that's not enough. You can't just decide not to be controlled by the senses. You have to have an engagement for them. And so now I'm approaching you, my Lord. Please engage me in your service. You fearless shelter. Sharanam, I think he's Sharanam Abhayam. Why fearless? Because we're kind of, just like it says, the mind can be the worst enemy. You're living with your worst enemy when it's out of control, when it's saturated with material desires, when it's in this demonic mentality. You, the soul, are being victimized by your own mind. So to get control of that means to strengthen the intelligence and do those things that can bring, can dovetail these propensities. Just like anger also, of course, Arjuna is on a battlefield. He has to be angry to fight. Kama, desire in general can be dovetailed. We can't be desireless. So what to desire? Desire to love Krishna and do those things that will awaken that desire. So here, these gates, he says they're gates, right? Dwaram, nashanam atmana, for the destruction of the soul. Of course, it can't be destroyed, but virtually destruction. So this is like the either or. Wasn't it Kierkegaard who had this either or? You're going to lead a virtuous life, or you're going to lead a sinful life and go to hell and suffer. So this is the whole chapter comes to a conclusion at this point. All right, let's do the next one. So next verse goes with this verse. Etaiva mukta konteya tamo dvarais tibirnaraha acharyat yatmanak tato yati padam gatim. Okay, after all of this heavy description of the hellish, now something very hopeful. The man who has escaped these three gates of hell, O son of Kunti, performs acts conducive to self-realization and thus gradually attains the supreme destination. Wow. Okay. Purport. One should be very careful of these three enemies to human life: lust, anger, and greed. The more a person is freed from lust, anger, and greed, the more his existence becomes pure. Then he can follow the rules and regulations enjoined in the Vedic literature. By following the regulative principles of human life, one gradually raises himself to the platform of spiritual realization. If one is so fortunate, by such practice, to rise to the platform of Krishna consciousness, then success is guaranteed for him. In the Vedic literature, the ways of action and reaction are prescribed to enable one to come to the stage of purification. The whole method is based on giving up lust, greed, and anger. By cultivating knowledge of this process, one can be elevated to the highest position of self-realization. This self-realization is perfected in devotional service. In that devotional service, the liberation of the conditioned soul is guaranteed. Therefore, according to the Vedic system, there are instituted the four orders of life and the four statuses of life, meaning the occupations and the spiritual ashrams, called the caste system and the spiritual order system. There are different rules and regulations for different castes or divisions of society, and if a person is able to follow them, he will be automatically raised to the highest platform of spiritual realization. Then he can have liberation without a doubt. So, this is Prabhupada would periodically talk about varnashram and how it's important for organized society. And then at other times you say, well, it's impossible to institute varnashram. Everybody has to join the Sankirtan party. That's, for purification. So, the varnashram is there. We have some farms, and we're trying to do that. But for each of us, the most important thing is to really embrace the process that we've been given, which doesn't depend on any birth, doesn't depend on even the outside culture. If there can be a little ashram like this, a little place, where you can have enough time and enough presence of mind to chant Hare Krishna and you lead a pure life, then you can actually make advancement in this way. It's so powerful. You remember what we've read. If you go, went through the 6th chapter with the yoga system and the karma yoga and the jnana yoga. Ultimately, Krishna will say, Sarva dharma parijajya, give it all up. Just surrender to me. And in this age, surrendering to Krishna means surrendering to the holy name and the process of chanting the holy name. Everything comes from that. You get the strength to practice all these things. To give up these three gates. Kama, krodha, tata, lobhas. It becomes feasible. You have to transfer the greed, to shlokas, to service. First it gets a little transferred to prasadam, that's okay. But you really want to get off that platform. But Prabhupada was very intelligent. He knew, okay, it's asking a lot, so eat as much as you want. They take a few more sweet bowls. They'd have a whole barrel of them by the doorway. Anyone could come in at any time, take sweet balls, meaning glubjamans. You hardly see them anymore. You can imagine, So that, but gradually you look for the sweet slokas. You can do maduram, and you can chant that 100 times. You don't get sick, but you eat 100 glubjamans, which used to happen. Glubjaman eating contest. Anyway, there's a process. Tasmade tatrayam tajay. And okay, let's read one more, and then we can finish the chapter tomorrow. Let's do the last 2 verses. Okay, we did that. 23. This one is really important, very often quoted. Yakshastra vidamutsujja vartate kamakarataha nasa siddham avapnoti nasukam naparam gatim. So this is one of these instances, is God in the Shastra where there's contrast, back and forth, back and forth. So now he says, on the other hand, he who discards scriptural injunctions and acts according to his own whims attains neither perfection nor happiness nor the supreme distant destination. Purport. Did we discuss a Vidi Purvakam? Was it you? Yeah. This is again Vidi. You see the Vidis, the instructions of Shastra. Purport: as described before, the Shastra Vidi, or the direction of the Shastra, is given to the different castes and orders of human society. Everyone is expected to follow these rules and regulations. If one does not follow them and acts whimsically according to his lust, greed, and desire, then he never will be perfect in his life. In other words, a man may theoretically know all these things, but if he does not apply them in his own life, then he is to be known as the lowest of mankind. In the human form of life, a living entity is expected to be sane and to follow the regulations given for elevating his life to the higher platform. But if he does not follow them, then he degrades himself. But even if he follows the rules and regulations and moral principles and ultimately does not come to the stage of understanding the Supreme Lord, then all his knowledge becomes spoiled. And even if he accepts the existence of God, if he does not engage himself in the service of the Lord, his attempts are spoiled. Therefore, one should gradually raise himself to the platform of Krishna consciousness and devotional service. It is then and there that he can attain the highest perfectional stage, not otherwise. The word kama karataha is very significant. A person who knowingly violates the rules acts in lust. He knows that this is forbidden, but still he acts. This is called acting whimsically. He knows that this should be done, but still he does not do it. Therefore he is called whimsical. Such persons are destined to be condemned by the Supreme Lord. Such persons cannot have the perfection which is meant for the human life. The human life is especially meant for purifying one's existence, and one who does not follow the rules and regulations cannot purify himself, nor can he attain the real stage of happiness. So this is one of the reasons why it's important to have a teacher, a guru who you accept, and you kind of internalize. Was it Freud who talked about the superego as kind of the conscience, right? And that, conscience means, well, yeah, really want to do that. Oh, no, my conscience, what will so-and-so think of me? What will my guru think of me? I can't, Or I know I should, but I really don't want to, And a lot of that comes, and especially in the early stage, with just peer pressure. That's why the value of sadhu sangha, of living with devotees, is cannot be estimated, because there's this, doing the right thing and not doing the wrong thing. There's all of this peer pressure that can help you do the right thing, and after some time, it becomes second nature. It's not like, I've been getting up from Mangalarti for 47 years, and then tomorrow, I'm just rolling over my bed. No way. It doesn't work that way. I can't. It doesn't matter when I took rest. It's just part of you, and it's good to get that habit, because it's just like bad habits. When you get addicted to some drug, it's practically impossible to break it on your own. That's why there's intervention. Somebody who loves you, cares about you, grabs you, say, "Oh, you're coming with me. You're going to the rehabilitation." And it's someone who has a relationship with you and you respect. You say, "Okay." So there's some hope. But until you internalize that, then and actually have the guidance of a higher authority, as it were, within you, a Krishna conscience. As this one devotee way back when I first joined, his name was Rupanuga. He would talk about that. He was one of the leaders in the early days. It's a really good term, a Krishna conscience. It means internalizing this instruction and making it part of you, and that it's your guiding light. Krishna talks about the higher self controlling the lower self, and that's what he means. And that's what Madhavendra Puri meant when my intelligence has now been strengthened, purified. It becomes stronger, and that becomes a vehicle. There's this beautiful verse, I'll leave and purport. The super soul is a form of, the intelligence is a form of guidance from the super soul. In other words, when your intelligence becomes purified by hearing and chanting and following, then the super soul is speaking to you through your own intelligence. And that strength allows you to control the lower self and say no or say yes when you want to do the opposite. So that's the protection. Otherwise, it can easily deviate. And we've seen, Prabhupada initiated almost 5,000 devotees, but many of them are, inactive, because it's very hard to maintain it all these years. But we can do it if we do the right thing. All right, we have time for one shloka and a poem attached. Any requests? All right, this is all a favorite. You haven't heard this one in a while. Radheti nama navasundara sinu mugdam. Krishneti nama madhurabhadagara dugdham. Sarvakshanam sarabhiraga himena ramyam kritvata daiva bibame rasane tradarte. An excellent fresh nectar drink, with endless subtle tastes. Such is the name of Radha, by whom all three worlds are graced. Condensed milk that is wonderfully delicious, thick and sweet. Such is the name of Krishna, in whom all attractions meet. Now mix these drinks, O thirsty tongue, and add the fragrant, cooling spice of love, a prize the wise will try to buy at any price. And then in every moment, drink this beverage most fine, and make my heart supremely blissful, peaceful, and divine. Raghunath Das Goswami. On that happy note, let us adjourn for kirtan. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Okay, last